Hi everyone, my name is Apuraj Garakapati. Welcome to my YouTube channel Amazing Apai.
I summon the ancient spell. Reveal your worlds. Every story has a world.
But Ronan smirks and stated that no one was dead just yet. Hammer turned around and asked Ronan what the meaning of all this was. The merchant then pulled a knife from behind the counter for another attempt, but he was not fast enough. In the next instant, Ronan delivered an elbow to his face and hit the man's hand, causing him to drop the dagger. Ronan began calling for the knights to restrain the bastards and search the surroundings, but he did not get to finish his sentence because a loud noise from the back attracted his attention. It appeared someone had blown up a building behind him, and Ronan realized it might be the location of the workshop. A past conversation with Logan then came to mind, where Logan told Ronan that while the repeating crossbow would eventually spread, the Liberatio must never be allowed to. Never. The people saw the explosion and started panicking. Looking at the rising smoke, both Hammer and Ronan realized they had to hurry back to see what happened. Ronan turned to Hammer and told him they must head back immediately. Seconds later, another knight rushed toward them. Ronan asked what was going on and told him they were in a hurry, so he could explain later. However, the man informed Ronan that it was an urgent communication from headquarters. Hearing the word headquarters, Ronan realized it must be from Logan. The soldier then told Ronan that troops from the First Princess faction were currently moving toward McLean Castle, indicating a whole army was approaching. Ronan was unsure what to do, but without a second thought, ordered the man to summon all militia and knights to stand by. He told Hammer they should head back to the shop for now, and Hammer agreed. With his hand on his sword, Ronan realized they were under attack from both inside and out, calling the enemies bastards. Annoyed, he prepared his sword and declared he would crush them all to pieces. Elsewhere, Logan was nervously pacing the floor, walking from left to right and touching his arm with 2 fingers while waiting. Suddenly, Ronan's voice could be heard through the communication channel. Logan told Ronan he was worried because they hadn't been in contact for days and asked what happened at the estate. Ronan informed Logan that the First Princess army had been annihilated. Hearing this, Logan felt relieved. Ronan explained they were only the forces of a Roman 6th Count, so the militia armed with repeating crossbows and Liberatio, along with a few keen knights, were enough to defeat them. Logan praised Ronan for doing a good job, but Ronan also had bad news. There was an assault on the workshop just before the attack. He reported that 3 dwarves were captured, which made Logan jump from his chair. However, Logan then told him it was alright, reasoning that unless it was Hammer or Clayton, the other workers didn't know the formula for Liberatio anyway, so they should be fine. Logan added that he was sure Ronan had caught a few attackers to interrogate and find out who was behind it, but Ronan did not seem so sure. Ronan turned his gaze away and told Logan that all those captured had committed suicide. He admitted to Logan that this was his fault, but Logan only smiled and said it was okay. However, Ronan added that according to a knight who faced the kidnappers, something was odd. The knight said he only got a glimpse and wasn't sure, but the face of one kidnapper seemed familiar. Hearing this, Logan was stunned. Ronan described the person as short and agile, appearing to be at least a top-tier knight. Logan thought about the description and who it might be, but Ronan explained that this alone wasn't enough to identify the culprit and apologize again. Logan thought that Ronan looked completely deflated. Logan then told Ronan that for now, he should have the militia train even more thoroughly. Ronan asked if Logan thought something like this might happen again. Logan admitted these were just speculations, but in a worst-case scenario, they must be ready. This startled Ronan, who asked if such a thing was really possible, and Logan confirmed that it could happen. Logan then turned to look out the window. He reflected that it was a good decision to leave Ronan behind at the territory since the damage was limited because of it. It was a clear raid targeting the new weapon combined with an assault on their main castle. Since both happened at the same time, Logan realized they couldn't both be part of Juan's scheme alone. He thought about how the war had dragged on for too long without any progress, because the First Prince's faction wouldn't react to provocations and remained heavily fortified in Harun Castle. Their base had been chosen only because McLean burned down the nearby supply depots, forcing them to retreat far and settle there. The First Prince's faction, unable to retreat further, was focusing all troops on defense. Logan wondered what would happen if someone were to charge in at the cost of their life to create an opening, noting that the war could end quickly if that happened. However, he concluded that no one wanted to make that kind of sacrifice, not even the Duke of Valtramine, and even amid all that, he felt things were going to get even worse. Later at a leadership meeting, someone banged their hand on the table, declaring that Maclean had given His Excellency a fake recipe for the bomb. A few days into the meeting, Beffrose told Jordan that Maclean must immediately disclose the correct method, so that the faction could begin mass production. Looking at Beffrose, Logan thought to himself that they were wasting strength on nonsense like this. Logan replied by asking Beffrose if he had actually run experiments in the middle of a war. He questioned where Beffrose had even obtained the bomb materials, as there was no place where they were currently available. Beffrose claimed that, fortunately, he had personally collected materials for testing, but then admitted the tests had failed miserably. When Logan asked if Beffrose was sure he simply hadn't messed it up, Beffrose became annoyed and started screaming at Logan. He told Logan to watch his mouth and asked if he thought he was dealing with some pathetic first circle mage, noting that he was actually a fifth circle mage. Suddenly Beffrose's expression changed. Jordan told Beffrose that this was an official meeting and to please mind his manners, prompting Beffrose to apologize. Even so, he turned back toward Logan and stated that Count wasn't one to fabricate nonsense. Jordan then asked Logan if he could prove the recipe, and Logan found himself unsure of what to say. Jordan told Logan that since he continued to be supplied with Liberatio, it appeared he had plenty of the materials at hand, so it shouldn't be hard for him to provide a demonstration. Logan felt cornered and realized there wasn't much he could say. Beffrose once again started screaming, asking Logan why he couldn't answer, and questioning if Logan really thought he could deceive His Excellency and the faction. This time, Jordan also raised his voice, telling Beffrose that this was too much, and that this would be his final warning. Hearing this, Beffrose settled down in his corner, seeing the fuss Beffrose was creating. Logan wondered why the man was suddenly looking so confident, given he was already on shaky ground. That was when Logan put all the pieces together. According to the knight who had confronted the kidnapper, the culprit had a familiar face, was a small-framed top-tier knight, and spoke with certainty about a bomb formula only a few would know. Logan figured out who the knight was. Beffrose must have been the kidnapper. If that small elite knight was a Slann, then their claim made sense. Beffrose must have interrogated the kidnapped dwarves and realized the flaws in the fake recipe Logan had given them. However, Logan thought that even if they were desperate, this was quite a gamble. He then considered that this situation could be useful. As he rose from his chair, he told everyone that it wouldn't be hard to prove. Much to Jordan and Beffrose's surprise, Logan said he would arrange a demonstration soon, though he knew this was a small lie for the moment. He then told them that rather than doubting the weapons formula, they should focus on breaking out of the current stalemate. Logan stated that this nonsense wasn't even what they should care about, as they knew their territory had been clearly attacked by the First Princess faction, and that was what truly mattered. Even though they had managed to repel the attack, there was no guarantee it wouldn't happen to other territories as well. Hearing this, Jordan said that attacking the First Princess faction now was difficult, as they were full of murderous intent, and striking prematurely would only bring heavy losses. Logan smirks and thought that they all knew this, but no one wanted to take responsibility. Logan then announced that the Maclean family would strike Harun Castle, and that he would take that burden. This left both Jordan and Beffrose stunned. Luther, Cal, and Lucian also didn't seem to anticipate this move. Logan smiled and thought that the time had come to break the deadlocked war wide open. Hearing what Logan had just said, Jordan asked if he was serious. Logan thought that Jordan must wonder why he would go this far. For now, the Second Princess faction had the advantage, but if the war dragged on for years, the situation would change. As the unspoken consensus formed that the war was dragging on, its very nature would change. It would shift from a war of assassinations and contests of strength into a total war where every last ounce of strength was squeezed out to devastate enemy territories. Until the war reached its end, commoners would be conscripted, which would naturally ruin the harvests. Ruined crops would lead lords to resort to forced requisitioning. Before we move ahead, please take a second to like on this video. A like tells me that you enjoyed this topic. Your support helps Amazing Apai grow naturally, which would create refugees. Those refugees would then turn into slash and burn farmers or bandits, causing further problems. A kingdom ruined in this way would eventually be swallowed by the empire, Logan thought that was why they must settle the civil war before that happened. Logan went on telling Jordan that he wasn't saying this without reason. He stated that the McLean family was prepared to accept every risk the battle brought and was prepared to make sacrifices. Jordan wondered why Logan would do that, given he was already the top contributor due to his previous achievements. He questioned why they would choose to sacrifice themselves now. Looking at Jordan, Logan thought that, as expected, the man wouldn't believe him easily, so he decided to try something else. Logan told Jordan that they weren't going to do this for free and that they wanted additional rewards beyond what was already promised. Jordan wondered what kind of reward Logan could possibly request, but played along asking Logan what it was. Logan smirks and prepared to state his request. He said he wanted a marquee title for McLean and the entirety of the Kalia Marquis State's lands. Furthermore, he wanted Jordan and His Majesty to guarantee everything in writing, after which he would definitely see the task through. Logan thought it was an excessive reward and an outrageous demand, but one sweet enough to justify the risk of sacrifice. Even if he had to stake everything, his family and himself, he thought this might just work. Everyone was now looking at Jordan, who said that the requested reward was excessive, far too excessive. He then clenched his fist and asked if Logan wanted a written guarantee, questioning if this meant Logan didn't trust his word. Logan replied that this was not the case, but rather that he needed a justification to convince his family. Logan asked for Jordan's understanding. Jordan thought that Logan had volunteered for this sacrifice, only to indulge in such greed. He looked down and thought it over before telling Logan that it was fine, but on one condition: Logan would have to leave 3 wagons of Liberatio behind. That way, Jordan said, the main forces wouldn't lack firepower while Logan was attacking Harun Castle. Hearing the request, Logan thought that Jordan was suspicious until the end, but he decided that much was acceptable and agreed. He thought that whatever Jordan planned to do with the Liberatio, Logan and his troops wouldn't be there by then anyway. Bafrost then looked on with a weird expression on his face, looking as though he were about to do something he wished he didn't have to. He stood up and announced that the Bafrost would also attack Harun Castle. Hearing this, Logan was stunned. Jordan asked Bafrost if he wasn't overreaching, but Bafrost insisted he was not. Bafrost stated he wouldn't ask for any excessive reward. Instead, he would sacrifice himself out of loyalty to the great cause. Looking at the scene, Logan thought that Bafrost would never do that. He concluded that unless the man had gone mad, he must have some other hidden motive. Looking at Bafrost's twisted face, Logan decided there was no question that he definitely had one. At Harun Castle, the atmosphere was equally unsettling. Gripping a glass of wine, the first prince stared in disbelief at the news brought to him. The army sent to McLean Castle had been utterly annihilated. The fat prince muttered that they had dispatched Baron-class forces, questioning how such a group could lose to a mere barony. He turned to Juan, asking if the McLean main forces weren't supposed to be away from their territory. Juan informed the prince that even the commoners there had been trained with crossbows. Judging by their growth, he noted they had clearly been preparing for more than a day or two. Juan speculated that they must have been planning for this war long ago. In a fit of fury, the first prince hurled his glass away, declaring that they could not simply stand by while those pests swarmed his territory. He demanded that Juan send a superhuman or whatever else it took to end this childish game immediately, asking point blank if he could do it. Juan was momentarily at a loss for words. In that instant, it became clear who truly held the power. As Juan began to speak, the first prince appeared terrified. Juan reached his hand forward and asked the prince if he had forgotten the teachings from his youth. The trembling prince stammered that his outburst wasn't what he meant. As Juan's hand approached the prince's face, he told the young man to simply do as he was taught, to trust his grandfather as he always had, and wait. Juan placed his hand over the prince's face before shifting his grip to the prince's shoulder, squeezing with force. The prince lowered his gaze and whispered that he understood. Juan huffed and retrieved the fallen glass from the ground, noting that the news wasn't entirely bad. He explained that they were also producing their own repeating crossbows and planned to deploy them on the walls as soon as they were ready. The prince smiled at the mention of the weapons, but the mood soured as they discussed the bombs. Unfortunately, they had failed to figure out the production method. Moreover, Juan mentioned a kidnapping incident inside McLean territory that had been carried out by someone else's hand. Because of that unauthorized move, security had become stricter, making it difficult to approach again. The prince screamed, demanding to know who dared to act without reporting to him first. Huan noted they had received interesting news regarding that matter, and looking down at the last sip of wine in his glass, remarked that things might turn out to be quite entertaining. Elsewhere, the McLean soldiers were on the march. One soldier complained about the abundance of hills, grumbling that he would be exhausted before they even reached Harun Castle. His companion agreed the terrain was awful, but noted it was still better than the route the Befros forces had to take. The Befros army was expected to cross a mountain to reach their destination, a task that would be painfully tiresome. The soldiers also noticed that today's formation was unusual. The crossbow cavalry, which always led from the front, had been moved to the very rear. They watched as the higher-ups Kaiselin, Victor, Hinckley, and Eileen kept glancing toward the back of the line. The soldiers wondered if there was something specific they were watching for, but they eventually dismissed the thought, trusting that the commander had a plan. Just as they settled into the march, a shout rang out. Troops were emerging from the mountains in the rear. The banner they carried depicted a rose burning amid flames. It was the Befros army. The McLean soldiers were confused, knowing the Befros were supposed to be heading for the south gate. Logan immediately gave the order for all troops to guard the rear, preparing them for battle. The soldiers wondered if Logan had known this would happen. Standing beside him, Patrick noted that everything was unfolding exactly as his information had suggested. Because Befros had been acting suspiciously, Logan had someone tailing him, confirming that the Count had been following behind the McLean march. Logan had initially thought Befros might simply leak information to the enemy to force a clash, but it appeared the Count had decided to attack them directly instead. Logan remarked that this was actually better. When Patrick asked how that could be, Logan prepared to unsheath his sword and stated there was only one thing left to do. They would deal with Befros right here and then withdraw from the war entirely. As the blades of grass whipped through the air, the Befros forces drew closer to the McLean lines. Logan stood tall upon his horse, his sword already drawn as he flanked Hinckley and Eileen. When the distance closed, Logan spoke first, asking Befros what could possibly bring him to this specific road. He pointed out the plain fact that their agreement dictated that McLean's would take the east gate, while Befros was to attack the south gate, and he questioned if this wasn't the arrangement they had settled upon. Befros countered by asking if the choice of route wasn't ultimately up to a field commander's discretion. As the Moonlight Knight and Aslan stared down Logan and his comrades, Befros explained that his troops simply wanted to avoid the enemy's gaze and chose this path for stealth. Logan argued that such a move would make it impossible to coordinate their operations. Much to the surprise of Eileen and Hinckley, Befros refused to back down. Instead, he reiterated for what felt like the 100th time that he was a Fifth Circle mage with a grand mission ahead of him. Becoming suspicious, Logan asked if Befros was intent on taking the front line. Befros replied that if Logan didn't mind, he would be more than happy to lead. It was clear to Logan that Befros had a hidden agenda, but he simply smiled, huffed, and told the Count to go right ahead. Befros thanked him for his understanding and ordered his troops to march past the McLean forces. The moment the hooves of Befros's horse moved, the McLean soldiers went on high alert, refusing to move an inch and preparing for battle. Victor looked Befros dead in the eye with his crossbow leveled. The two forces faced each other once more, though this time much closer than before. Roger Befros realized then that Logan's words were hollow. He had no intention of letting them pass. Logan addressed Roger again, echoing the Count's earlier sentiment by saying that since the route was up to the field commander, the McLeans were also thinking about changing their direction. To the shock of Roger and his knights, Logan announced they would be falling back for now. Roger was left speechless, struggling to understand Logan's aim. Logan then shouted for all his troops to hear that they were returning to base, and the soldiers acknowledged the command. Roger demanded to know what Logan was doing. Logan told Roger that they should both stop pretending. He looked Roger in the eye and asked if he should contact the Duke immediately to see if this discretion would be excused. At this, Roger's mask slipped and he became visibly angry. He stopped the charade and ordered his men to engage exactly as planned. Logan matched the command, ordering all his units to prepare for battle as he gripped Lux tightly, declaring that this was where they would end Befros. Roger raised a staff evident. Before we move ahead, please take a second to share on this video. Sharing helps this video reach friends who may also enjoy anime, gaming, travel, cricket, chess, career basics, or personal stories. Your support helps Amazing Apai grow naturally. In Artifact, and ordered his mages to gather. He struck the ground with the staff and began a spell, seemingly funneling all their power into a single attack. Observing the surge of wind magic, Logan initially wondered if it was a protective spell for the Bepharos troops. He then realized that Roger was wrapping mana not just around himself, but into a massive barrier covering thousands of soldiers. Logan turned to Clayton, asking if such a feat was possible. Clayton replied that while a Grand Mage might manage it, Roger was only a 5th Circle Mage. He concluded the staff must be an incredibly powerful artifact. Even so, Clayton noted the move was reckless and inefficient, as the barrier would only last an hour or 2 at most. Hearing the phrase, "hold out," Logan began to wonder why Bepharos would gamble for a few hours. As Roger smirked, Logan suspected there was more to the plan and decided they should defend and observe for the moment. However, the situation changed instantly, as projectiles, shifting from blue to red, flew toward the McLean lines. It appeared Bepharos had created his own version of Liberatio. As Bepharos smiled, waiting for the impact, and asking if Logan thought they would just stand by, Eileen screamed the name of the weapon. She realized that striking the bombs down might be the only escape, yet even that seemed impossible given the sheer number of projectiles. Suddenly, a yellow flash ripped through the sky. In the next instant, all the projectiles exploded, prematurely, lighting up the sky even brighter than before. Eileen noted it looks like some kind of net, and Hinckley stood stunned as the Liberatio was neutralized before reaching a single McLean soldier. Eileen recognized the golden light as the projectiles were caught in a shimmering web. Logan then landed on the ground in a superhero pose, huffing as he looked up at the sky. He could hardly believe his improvised plan had worked. His body had moved on instinct. He reflected that while a single powerful strike, like the Dangium Cham, wouldn't have been enough to stop every bomb, he had realized he didn't need massive force, just enough coverage to trigger the explosions. The result was a technique born of crisis, a harmony of reason and instinct that created a variation of the divine sword technique. Seeing the failure of the attack, Roger ordered his soldiers to throw more bombs, but a soldier informed him they were out of stock as those had been the only one smuggled in. Logan realized then that the Bepharos forces were out of supplies and must have stolen the weapons from Walter Mean. Despite the setback, a trembling Roger remained determined to hold the McLeans back. He ordered his knights to charge. Logan met the challenge, telling his own knights to prepare for a countercharge, activating his Wind Boots artifact. Logan surged toward the cavalry, intent on crashing into the Bepharos line. Suddenly, a red light appeared before him, an attack that pushed him back. Though he managed to parry it, Logan looked up and noted that the Bepharos twin swords had finally shown themselves. Both the Slann and the Moonlight Knight stood ready, fully prepared to take on and kill Logan. Next, a moment from the past appeared with France struggling to block an attack. It seemed the one who launched the assault was a Slann, who told France that this was his win. Seeing this, France grew annoyed, and Slann informed him that while his whip-like blade was perfectly effective, it lacked decisive power. France admitted he was aware of that, noting that while the blade had extended flexibility and reach, it easily fell to the strength of an equal level. Slann then told France that if he did not want to lose to him again next time, he should figure out some countermeasures. France replied that Slann should just forget it, as he could spend a lifetime after awakening his force blade on that, and it still would not work, as it was ultimately just a quirk of his sword. Besides, France mentioned that he alone was not the twin swords of Bepharos, which sparked Slann's interest and acknowledgement. As France smiled and wondered why he was suddenly remembering his old days, he could only come up with one explanation. His life was flashing before his eyes. In the present, it seemed he was unable to parry or block Logan's attack, and he began coughing up blood. With this blow, Logan told France that it was about time they said their goodbyes. Then, he used his blade to cut through France as if he were made of butter. Seeing this scene, Slann ran to help his friend, screaming his name, but it was already too late. Slann leaped toward Logan, calling him a bastard. Logan, however, did not move an inch and simply awaited the attack. Blinded by fury, Slann shouted at Logan that he was going to kill him as he prepared to strike. Unfortunately for him, This kind of attack was met with an easy parry, as Logan dodged and hit Aslan's back with a powerful slash. After that, Aslan started coughing up blood as well. Looking at Aslan falling to the ground, Logan told him that, in the end, without an artifact, he could not truly be called the Swift Knight. Seeing this, Aslan picked himself up and called Logan a brat. Before he had the chance to say anything else, he noticed Logan had unleashed yet another powerful attack, hitting the ground and sending a wave of mana toward Aslan. It looked like that might be the end for the not-so-swift knight. Fortunately for him, Roger intervened in the fight, waving a spell that blocked the attack and saved Aslan. Logan realized what happened and thought about what he should do next, grabbing his sword and slashing through the magic with mana, only it was too late, as Aslan had already run away. Logan then noticed a sound that caught his attention, indicating the wind shield was about to collapse and leave the Befro soldiers defenseless. An arrow then hit one of the enemy soldiers behind Logan. Seeing this, Logan wondered if the shield was getting weaker, and if that meant Roger Befros was getting tired as well. However, this was not the case, as a powerful wind slash approached him. Logan barely managed to block the surprise attack, noting it was truly an incredible force. He realized Roger was not actually tired, but had simply weakened the strength of the shield to focus mana on attacks. Struggling to block the incoming attacks, Logan's only choice was to call Roger a bastard. It looked like Roger was prepared to sacrifice his own troops just to take Logan down. Roger then shouted at Logan, calling him and his family abominable, claiming they had stolen his castles and killed his right hand. Logan reminded him that in this story, Roger was actually the traitor who had lost against his own greed for Logan's land. Then Logan noticed Aslan trying to attack him from behind. He managed to block Aslan's attack, and the sound of the two blades clashing could be heard across the battlefield. Logan tried to counter, but Aslan dodged and leaped back as one of Roger's winged blades came toward Logan. As he blocked the attack, Logan thought that both Roger and this monkey were assaulting him without any respite to force his defense to collapse. Logan thought it would be easy to sweep everything away with long-range attacks, but he needed to conserve his strength. Knowing Roger was still hiding something, Logan looked down at his sword and thought he could just use that. He clenched his sword hard, preparing a technique until the blade appeared to warp. He held it close to his head and unleashed an attack where the blade acted like a whip. With this, Logan managed to counter all of Befro's attacks in one motion. He was happy the attempt worked, having used the Moonlight's whip-like flexible force blade to conserve strength while launching long-range attacks. Logan thought that stopping all those bombs earlier helped him figure out how to use it, and that the fourth form of the Divine Sword secrets was within reach. However, Logan did not get to finish the thought as Aslan started screaming, asking how Logan dared to insult France's technique like that. Aslan could not understand how Logan managed to figure it out, or how the kid could grow so quickly. Running toward him, Aslan wondered if it was hard effort, but concluded that if it had been a matter of effort, he would have ground his own bones to dust, just to stand up to those fools who looked down on him. Aslan thought of how he rose to his current standing through his will alone, believing no one's resolve could stand against his. As Logan, before we move ahead, please take a second to like on this video. A like tells me that you enjoyed this topic. Your support helps Amazing Apai grow naturally. Prepared to attack once again, Aslan's mind was filled with the question of how, like a demon, prepared to eat the soul of the innocent. Aslan was filled with rage, engulfed in mana, and screamed at Logan, asking if he was more dedicated than him, something he could not perceive after all he had been through. Seeing Aslan coming toward him, Logan realized he was overheating. In fact, Aslan had surpassed that and was now burning away his very life force. Preparing the whip blade, Logan noted that Aslan had wagered his life on this battle. He unleashed the whip to end Aslan, with blood flowing from his mouth. Aslan kept going forward, telling Logan that he had seen through the weakness of that technique long ago, and that Logan must also realize it now. Logan's body felt heavy and the air weighed down his movements, which he wondered if it was Roger's doing. Aslan anticipated the question while clenching his sword, the veins on his face popping out as he said the fatal weakness Franz was never able to overcome, combined with Befro's power would be Logan's, and he prepared his most powerful attack, telling Logan to curse his own genius as he died. Logan opened his eyes and told Aslan that Unfortunately, he had also put his own life on the line. This was the moment Aslan realized he made a fatal mistake. He thought of his fight with Franz, and how Franz said his attack lacked decisive power and fell to equal strength. Aslan's sword broke in two in his final moments. He wondered how that could be when the answer was right before his eyes. Aslan realized that Logan was not his equal, but was way more powerful than he could have ever been. With this, Logan had managed to get rid of Aslan as well. Seeing the scene, Roger was left petrified, fueled with rage as his humanity ran away, leaving only animalistic behavior. He screamed Logan's name, letting him know that this would not be the end. A glimpse into the past resurfaced, showing Roger Beffros questioning how he had fallen into such a state not long ago. He viewed the McLeans as mere insects beneath his feet, yet now they had seized his territory and struck down his most loyal followers. Roger began grinding his teeth, swearing that he would not permit things to conclude this way. At that moment, the mages positioned behind him sensed a sudden, violent shift in his mana. One of the mages suddenly appeared as if the very life was being drained from his frame, and he collapsed to the floor while Beffros remained standing tall. Witnessing this, Logan realized that Roger was forcibly absorbing the mana of his own allies as he prepared a devastating strike. Roger roared that he would finish Logan with his own two hands. Simultaneously, something caught Logan's attention. It seemed that Roger's escalating spell was also suffocating Eileen and Victor, leaving them gasping for air. Eileen remarked that the atmosphere had become unbearable, while Patrick questioned the source of this overwhelming pressure, and Hinckley cried out that it felt as though his entire body was being ripped apart. Logan reflected that it felt as if the very oxygen around them was being gathered into Roger's palm. He understood that while it was a technique utilizing the wind, it was fundamentally different from the aura of Wiccancalia, nor was it simple mana. It was nothing less than raw magical power, the authority of the Sixth Circle. Observing Roger's display, Logan noted that the man must have momentarily exceeded his natural limits through the power of his artifact. Roger, however, appeared completely indifferent to Logan's words, simply launching a direct assault while screaming for his death. He unleashed multiple tornadoes of magical energy that converged on Logan all at once. It certainly appeared that Logan was trapped. This time, he knew he had to evade this strike, but his sword did not seem to be responding correctly. Then the light of Lux began to shine, evoking an ancient legend, a masterpiece forged with the soul of a master dwarf, which resonates with its owner over many years. When such a weapon is truly tamed, a rare phenomenon occurs where its unique trait manifests. Though its official class might be a mystery, its power awakens in a form that perfectly suits its master. For Logan, that power was time acceleration. He realized this technique was akin to Velocitas, but instead of just the mind, his entire physical body was accelerated. As Logan opened his eyes, an immeasurable surge of power coursed through him. As the magic tornado swallowed the battlefield, Logan vanished from sight. Suddenly, Logan's mana erupted from the center of the magical dome. Roger was left paralyzed by terror. Logan had not only evaded the strike, but was now standing just a few feet away. Approaching his foe, Logan remarked that this was truly a pathetic conclusion. Due to the strain of his final spells, Roger's form had withered, leaving him looking like a ragged old man with no future left. Logan gripped his blade firmly, declaring he would end it there, and unleashed a final strike upon Beffros. A concentrated beam of mana raced toward the enemy, who was now too feeble to mount a defense. Roger watched the projectile approach in disbelief, wondering if any options remained. Ultimately, he shut his eyes and waited for the impact. The attack hit home, causing a massive explosion that completely obscured Roger from view. Logan could hardly believe what he saw next. Beffros had managed to conjure one last defensive barrier, which had just barely shielded him from the brunt of the attack. Coughing up blood, Roger raised his head and shrieked Logan's name. It was a face so distorted, it seemed capable of haunting one's nightmares. Logan stood uncertain of his next move. Kneeling on the ground, Beffros declared he could not continue this way and used his artifact to summon a final spell. A massive sphere of mana formed above him. Like a bloodthirsty vampire, Roger stared at his own end, telling Logan they should perish together. Eileen and Victor, terrified by Roger's intent, screamed for Logan to fall back. Instead, Logan lunged toward Roger. His slash was perfect this time, as he moved behind the count in an instant. As the blade cut through him, Logan told the Count he could die alone. Roger shrieked in agony as his arm was severed and fell to the ground. Logan turned his back, glancing over his shoulder at the broken body. Roger shivered as his blood soaked the earth, contemplating his sudden loss of strength. Logan looked down at the man with a sense of pity. The once great Count had been replaced by a monstrous, hairless figure with patches of missing skin. Roger attempted to speak, but blood began to leak from his eye sockets instead of tears. Dropping his head, he blamed Logan for his ruin. Without a hint of remorse, Logan asked if those were his final words. Roger warned him not to think this was the end. Even as his hand began to crumble into dust, his entire body started to disintegrate and fade away, like ash in the wind. As he vanished, he left a final warning that Logan and his family would soon follow him. Logan remained silent, staring at the spot where his enemy had stood. Eileen and Victor surveyed the aftermath of the struggle. Standing by Hinckley, Patrick noted with awe that Roger's magic still lingered in the air. Clayton observed that because the magic was fueled by Roger's own life force, the lingering effects were substantial. Kaiselin muttered that Roger had been a nuisance until the very last second. As a hawk circled above them, Clayton remarked that the effect would not last much longer, but I have a feeling that the hawk might somehow be connected to the fallen Count Bifrost. The aftermath of the struggle left the battlefield scarred with immense collateral damage. But finally, a moment of rest seemed possible for the weary soldiers. Logan, however, remained the only one unsatisfied with the outcome. His gaze fixed upon the hawk above with murderous intent, sensing that the danger had not truly passed. He shouted to his comrades, alerting them that the battle was far from over and they must prepare for another engagement immediately. Logan had finally unmasked what Roger had been concealing. The hawk, which was Roger's transformed essence, dived toward the earth and landed on the shoulder of a man who bore the bird as his own crest. That man was none other than Wiccancalia, arriving with the Stormsword army to eliminate Logan on behalf of Bifrost. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to Amazing Apai. Subscribing makes sure you do not miss the next video, and it gives me motivation to keep improving the quality of every upload. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next one.